Hi, welcome back. Okay, look at 6. Okay, so they want to know, can we use the HL theorem? And so we gotta check our 3 things. Do we have both right angles? Yes. Are both of the hypotenuses congruent? Okay, meaning on this one that they're the same number. Okay, and so how can you tell which one is the hypotenuse? Because you can't really say, well, 10 because that's the longest side, because we have a side 10 and a side 6. You can't say 10 because what if this one was a 14 and we don't really know? Okay, so, but you can tell if they're across from the right angle. And this one is across from the right angle, and this one is across from the right angle, and so they're both 10. Okay, and so we can say, yep, so those are congruent, and then we have a pair of legs that are also congruent. So yes, by that HL theorem, you can do that, okay? Look at 8, okay? The hypotenuse leg theorem. We need to check 3 things. Is there a pair of right angles? No, there's not. And so that puts us at a dead halt. Okay, you can't do anything else. There's not a pair of right angles, and so no, you cannot use a hypotenuse leg theorem on this one. Okay, 10. What additional information would prove each pair of triangles congruent by the hypotenuse leg theorem? Okay, and so this one they want to tell you, they want you to use the hypotenuse leg theorem, but what else would you have to have in order to make that work? Okay, so what else would we have to have? And so you can just run through the check marks. Okay, is there a pair of right angles? No, there's not. And so one of the things that you would have to have is that there has to be a pair of right angles. And so you can mark them on here, place. And then we can check the other stuff. Okay, do we have congruent hypotenuses? Yes. Okay, and do we have a congruent leg? Yes. So what would need to be true in order for this to work? Well, those right angles. So you would need to say angle A and angle Q, you could say are right angles. Okay, and that's what would need to be true. In order for our HL theorem to work, angle A, okay, and angle Q would have to be right angles. Okay, and we have everything else that we need, but we don't have those 2 things. Okay, angle A and angle Q are right angles. Okay, look at 12. Okay, they want to know what is missing. What do you need in order to use the HL theorem? Okay, so run through the motions. Do we have right angles? Yes. Do we have congruent hypotenuses? Okay. I do have something marked, but is it a leg or is it a hypotenuse? Okay. And our hypotenuse is the one across from the right angle. So we would need this to be marked with a 2 and this to be marked with a 2 in order for us to use that. Okay. And so how you would write it in geometry would be to say, it's technically a line segment, so you say LN, and you put the bar on above there, Hannah, is congruent to XZ, or you could say ZX or NL, okay, the order doesn't matter whether it says LN or NL, okay, ZX or XZ, okay, but that's what we would need to know. Okay, we would need to know that this one is congruent to this one in order for that to work, and that's how we write it in geometry. In words, we would say we need the hypotenuses to be congruent, okay? And in lamer words, for you guys, you would say, I need those 2, I'm missing another 2 tick mark side, okay, or something like that. But in geometry, this is how you need to write it, okay? Okay, 14 is the same. What are we missing? What do we need? Okay, there are 3 requirements for the hypotenuse leg theorem, and I want you to take a second and think about what they are. What are the 3 things that we need to use the HL theorem? Okay, we need a pair of right angles. We need a pair of congruent hypotenuses and a pair of congruent legs. Okay, so essentially you need 1 bow and 2 tick marks. Okay, and by that I mean before when we were doing something like this, we would need technically, granted it's going to be a square, but you need one bow and two sides marked. Okay, one angle and two sides marked. But they got to be specific, okay? It's got to be the side across from the right angle, and it needs to be a square on the inside because it needs to be a right angle. But that's essentially what you need is one bow and two ticks. Okay, and so do we have one bow and two ticks? Well, I got two ticks, and so I know that I'm missing the bow. And instead of the bow, it's kind of the right angle. So what needs to be marked to use that HL theorem is these angles need to be right angles. Okay, and take a second and try to write that in geometry. Okay, so you're going to say angle M and angle S need to be right. They need to be a right angle for that to work. Okay, the hypotenuse leg theorem tells us we need right triangle, congruent hypotenuse, congruent leg. We got right triangle, congruent hypotenuse, okay, and congruent legs. Okay, 16. 16's a little bit tricky because we only have one angle marked. So what else would we need to know? Okay, and I would accept either answer. But when two triangles are touching, you know you can mark something. What can you mark? Okay, well, you can mark this middle side for sure. They're sharing a side. And so that one's kind of given, but no, lay down. But some of you guys are gonna be tempted to say, well, I need to know the middle one and the other one, but that one's like a given, okay? So what else would we need to know? And technically, that's the hypotenuse. They're across from those right angles. And so we would need to know one of the side lengths. And I'm gonna change my color here. You would either need to know this line segment or this line segment. Okay, and so either one of those for an answer would work, and so I'm going to write it in both ways. So we would need to know WZ, line segment WZ, is congruent to, what's congruent to WZ or ZW? Okay, well, WZ has 3 tick marks, and so we got XY. Okay, or on the flip side of that, we could do the blue one. So you could say WX is congruent to ZY. Okay, and same thing, it doesn't matter if you say XY or YX, ZY, YZ. Okay, and so that's what we need to know. And the legs, there's always, when we look at a triangle, there's always a hypotenuse and 2 legs. And so that's why this one technically has 2 answers, because we have our hypotenuse is already given, it's marked. But our 2 legs, there's 2 options to pick as far as what we would need for that HL theorem. And I will tell you 17 is going to be something like that too. Okay? 17 your answer should look somewhat similar to 16. Okay, 18. It says, are these triangles congruent? Explain. Okay, the answer is no, but I want you to explain in your own words, okay, why it's no. And I'll tell you the reason why, but you need to write it out yourself. So let's look at this picture. So our hypotenuse leg theorem tells us that we need 2 right angles. Do we have that? Yeah. Okay, we got 2 right angles. We need congruent hypotenuses. Okay, do we have that? Now, at first glance, some of you guys are going to say, yeah, 25 and 25. However, if we look at this first one, this hypotenuse is 25. And the reason that I know that's the hypotenuse for sure is because it's across from the right angle. Now, let's look at the other one. Some of you guys would want to say 25, but what is the hypotenuse? Technically, we don't know, because the hypotenuse, although this side says 25, the hypotenuse is, we don't know. It's not marked because it should be over here. It should be, this is where the 25 should be at, and I'll write it in red just so you can see, but this is where the 25 should be at, and it's not. It's here, okay? And that's not really what we want. And then there are congruent legs, okay? And so when we look at our information given that's good for us, we got our right angles, we have our leg, but we don't technically have the hypotenuse. Okay, and so you need to write in your own words what's the problem with no, these are not congruent because, and I want you to explain. Okay, 19, it says write one example of where the Pythagorean theorem is used in the real world. Google it. Okay, I know you guys all got a phone or iPad, Google it and fill that out. What are 3 things that must be true in order for you to use the hypotenuse leg theorem? Or state the theorem in your own words. Okay, so what are the 3 things that we need? Okay, we need 3 things every single time to use the hypotenuse leg theorem. Okay, so you got 19 and 20, well, 18, 19, and 20, technically, and then all of the odds on the rest of them, except for one, I did that. Okay, so get this done today, turn it in. Just a reminder, you need to have completed by tomorrow, okay, assignment 10, 11, and 12. Okay, 12 is today's, obviously, but 10, 11, and 12. And hopefully I will see you guys on Friday. We'll see. I miss you guys, and I'll see you soon.